Good morning, my little potato chips. Wee Paddy from across the shuck. I hope you're all well this morning. I'm doing good. And, uh, well, you'll have seen by the title what this video is about. I haven't made the title up yet. It's going to be something along the lines my journey through YouTube. And I don't know what it's going to be, whether it's going to be a one part, two part, three parts. I might just run right the way through it, or I might think you've had enough and I'll give you a break. But whatever way, I'm going to do it. And because I think it's a useful journey for me as a YouTuber, where I've started from, where I've got to, the bit in between, and then where I want to go to. And I don't have any big plans. This has never been a planned journey. This has started off simply because I suffer from depression. I had a real dark period of my life. I'm not going to go through it. I suffered from a PSD, nothing to do with the military, although I'm ex-military, but it was something that happened in my life. I'm not going to go into it again. I've gone through all that. But I started collecting knives as a little hobby, as a sideline. And then somebody had suggested, I think it was one of my kids, why don't you start a YouTube video and show people what you've got? That's how it all started. Somewhere along the line, because it's been over 4 years and getting into near 5 years, I've been doing YouTube. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. The ups, the downs. It's like any sort of hobby. You go up, down, all around the houses. You meet amazing people. Things move on. You lose some. You don't lose them, but just everything just sort of moves on. And I'm not the best communicator. I'm of an era where if you wanted me, you got me by landline. There was no mobile phones, so I didn't have to speak to people that much. I just, as a young teenager, there was no phone, so you just waited until you seen the person, then you talked. Face to face, I'll talk a leg off you. But talking to this wee phone, I still find it unusual, difficult to do. Not that you would know because I waffle, but it is still a new thing to me. But anyhow, let's get on with that. What have I decided to do? I've decided to do a journey, and I'm going to show you now. This is the journey you're going on. This is the knives that are going to be on that journey with you. This is from the beginning to where I am now. And I'm going to show them in some sort of order as we're going along of how my journey has progressed and where it's going to. So let's just get started. Right. I told you why I started the YouTube channel. I'm not even sure if that's all the truth. It could be a bit made up. So there we go. Anyway, I started. And when I first started, I didn't have a budget. On a fixed income, didn't have a budget to buy expensive knives. Didn't matter. I joined YouTube. I started off with these knives. My first video was on this Ganzo. And not this particular one. I don't know how many of these I've had. But I had this, and I'd done it with my wife that year. Had bought me a Delica for Christmas. It cost £60. I thought I have found the right woman, because for us, £60 for a pocket knife was big money to spend. And I couldn't believe she'd spent it. And it was the dearest knife I had for a long time, and was to be for quite a long time. But I found AliExpress, I found the Chinese websites where I could buy pocket knives with locks and flippers that I couldn't buy in this country. I didn't know where to buy in this country. So I started with this little Ganzo, and I loved Ganzos. They were just great for somebody on a budget, because you could get a really useful knife with a half-decent steel to practice sharpening on, to practice knife use. I'd been a bushcrafter, so I've always liked knives, but it was more fixed blades like Moras and things like that. Bushcraft knives. Fishing, I had fishing knives and things like that. I had a big buck that I used for fishing. It was one of the big ones with a gut hook in it. I had knives like that, but these were just pocket knives. Now, these were illegal to carry, but I could have them in the house, and I'm an old fart, so most people don't stop you when you're an old fart. You'll find that out too. But I loved the thought, and I loved talking about them. I loved going through their actions, what they were like. And the old Ganzos, when they first came out, let me tell you, they took the skin off your fingers trying to break them in. It could have took a week of just constantly flicking to break them in, because I didn't know any different. I didn't know the Sandown washers until about 2 years into knife collecting. But that was where I started, was Ganzo's cheap knives from China. But I was getting replicas of, oh, I'll just do it this way. I was getting replicas of knives that were out there. Now, this is the Spyderco PM2. Is it a copy? I don't know, because it's got an access lock. The PM2 doesn't have one. So, but it was very looky-likey. Like all knives get eventually, they get looky-likey, because there's only so many shapes you can put a blade into or a handle into, and if it's comfortable, you use it. These knives, this knife's still as good. It's 440C. It's an amazing work knife. And if you don't have the money to buy a PM2, I just wish these were more readily available. I don't even think they sell them on AliExpress anymore. Or GearBest was another one. But they're worth looking for. This is the 729, G729. This was an amazing knife. Amazing knife to start with. And I just loved the fidget factor. And I'd never used knives for fidgeting until I started the YouTube channel and started getting these knives and finding out just how much fun it was to sit and do that, and how annoyed your wife would get. So that's where I went, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I started meeting people and having wee chats. Again, I'm not the biggest for long chats, but I started meeting people who were like me, who whether they were young or they were old, they were starting in, and I tended to mix with that people who were buying the same sort of knives as I did. And then I started to talk about people who had the different sort of knives, the more expensive knives that I couldn't afford. So I loved watching their channel, thinking, one day I'll maybe get that, but it doesn't really matter. I'm enjoying what I was doing. And that's exactly what I was doing. The likes of San Remo, Chris Reeve, supposedly look like a G10. Doesn't it? It kind of looks like a 21, but it's a beautiful knife. And this was in 12C27, which is a great steel. I have Batterdale, and you'll probably not. This knife has been used to death over the years, and it's still an amazing knife, and it's never left my collection. It's just a liner lock. But if you can get a knife like this knife, this knife cost me under £20, and it has an action of any of these modern knives coming out. Look at that. It's just a great knife, and these were under £20 I was getting these for, and enjoying them. But you do tend to, look, I remember when I first came around, I used to watch people like Jeff Jewell, the Apostle P, Jim Skelton, who had knives that were beyond, they were as dear as a car. Do you know what I mean? They were as dear as a car. But I loved watching their channels, and I still watch Jim every now and then, although he doesn't do as many videos now. But they're the sort of people, I watched that were about. Jeff Jewell was a sharpener, so I didn't know how to sharpen properly. I followed him religiously for about 2 years. I copied and watched and asked him questions, and they're the sort of people who answered you and became a friend. Although, well, I'm probably the worst at keeping in contact with people. That's my problem. I find that incredibly hard. I think because me and my wife Sally are quite loners. We had 10 children between us. So we have so many family. I have about 24 grandchildren. By the time you weigh all that into it, the time you get to actually do your knife videos and all, the life just passes you by. And I never mean to be ignorant, but I suppose I am. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being ignorant. But I do keep in contact over Instagram, or people will answer my or put things in my videos. I do try my very best to keep up. But anyhow, I mean, I just kept going in that vein for about 2 years, because GearBest started sending me knives that I wasn't having to pay for. So I had plenty of content to keep the channel going. And that's the hardest thing, is to keep up the content. I couldn't do a video every day like some of the boys now. I don't even think I'd want to do one every day. Sometimes I have a wee batch where I will do a week in a row, and then I'll maybe not do one for, 4 or 5 days. But I've always sort of kept fairly regular. I've never been that far away from a video. And I think that's more for my subs, because I've had subs. I still have a lot of subs that have been with me from that first year. And I can't thank them enough. There isn't enough words for me to say how much I enjoy the feedback they still give. Um, some of them are still not buying expensive knives, and that's absolutely fine. I love listening to what they're buying is the new Ganzos and the new that still excites me. And I have a drawer full of knives like that, and I've some of these ones will never leave. Ganzo went up to D2. It was the biggest sensation for budget knife reviewers. Ganzo with D2, they tested it. It was all right. It was cutting for a fair amount of time. Can't remember what the tests were, but it was better than 440C most of the time anyway that I know. It was great. I loved them. And again, the Ganzo, the action on the Ganzos are just, they keep anybody interested. I don't care whether you get a high-end knife or not. When they drop like that. And that is as smooth and as nice as most high-end knives that I have. Can't beat it. But, like all things in life, we want to keep on going and we want to improve on what we've got and we want it to get better. I then started to buy Slippies, Rough Riders, the older type Rough Riders, 440A. Again, it was a steel. Because I'd learned to sharpen, I was able to sharpen all these without a problem. So the steel really has never been a goal of mine to get the steel. Yes, I wanted maybe different knives, but it was never really about the steel. And I can remember the first time and only time I have done a dance on YouTube. And it was that fella, Jeff Jewell, who has helped me no end with sharpening stones. He's just been an absolute gem. And he sent me, this was my grail. I'd always talked that I would always love a Benchmade 940. I was never going to be able to afford one because over here they were about £180 at the time. I was never, ever going to be able to afford one in my head because that was my life. There was no way I was going to ever earn that much money because I wasn't working. So he sent me this knife. It was his old knife. He'd used it and I have used it in the 3 years since he sent it to me. And I still love this knife with as much passion as the day I'd done the dance. And there is a video with that dance. And if you want to see Popsy moves, that's the place to go. So I got my first high-end knife. Boy, does that open the door, because you have a Benchmade 940 and a Ganzo. The action, as I said, was brilliant, but it's not. The feel of this knife to this knife is like chalk and cheese. It really is. Do they cut the same? Yeah, they cut about the same. S30V, D2. They cut about the same. They last, well, this lasts maybe a wee bit longer, but again, because I could sharpen, it was never really about the steel. It was about the manufacturer. And it's like buying a Lada and then going to a BMW. The difference is just mind-blowing. You close the doors, you hear the difference. You know, you open and close a knife, you hear the difference, you feel the difference. This was a complete game changer for me. This set off things in me that I didn't know I could save for knives. But, and this is the important but, you know, lots of people sent me knives and I can't go through all their names. It's just impossible because people really did help me. And when I struggled with money, they sent me knives to keep the channel going. And I hope I'm doing the same now with other people. But it's so hard to, I find things hard to accept. I'd rather give a gift than get a gift. But I've been blessed with an enormous amount of really generous people over the years. And this channel just wouldn't have existed without them. It genuinely, and that's the truth, it wouldn't have existed. Not an exaggeration, because I just didn't have the money to keep up. And I couldn't keep up financially myself with the boys that came in with me, like Stasa and, you know, all the other boys were around that day. There was JT. JT wasn't so bad. He didn't go into the very high end. But I couldn't keep up with that price range at the time. I still find it incredibly difficult. I don't want to go that way. But other people that I'm just going to give a mention to who've been with me and are still with me now, I got this custom made for me by Tony Meador, the ZT. Now, if you can imagine, when I was coming around, ZT, Benchmade, Hinderer, Chris Reeves were all them top knife makers that I never thought I would get. And then somebody sends you this. And how do you repay people for doing things like this and sending them to you? You don't. They're gifts that have come from that person, and I hope he gets the blessing of them, because I could never repay this to the amount of people who have helped me along the way. And I'm going to bring another one out for a boy who sent me more high-end knives than anybody out there, and I barely know him. And that's what this community's like. Jason Guilfoyle sent me a whole stack. I have them in there. He sent me a whole box of knives, and up to this artisan standard. This is the titanium. I can't even remember. Is it M390? I think it's M390. Oh, it's on the blade here. Yeah, well, it's M390. It's top. This is a $200 knife. You know, when it first came out, the Archaeo, the titanium, carbon fiber, blade steel to die for, flipping action, which is very similar on par to this. So I was getting knives that were beyond anything that I could afford, or I thought that I'd be able to get. And this is where my story sort of changed. I'm just going to keep going because I could stop now. It's 15 minutes, but you can upload it if you like and watch it at your leisure. But this is just as much for me as it is for you. So then things changed in my life. As most people's lives change and something happens. And when you get to my age, you lose your parents. Pensions come through. All sort of things, you know. My dad died first. My mum died. Then I had a share of a house between me and my brother. It was a wee small terraced house. It wasn't much money, but it was a lot of money to me. I got my Navy pension through with a wee lump sum. Right behind you there, about 10 foot, is my little car. I was able to buy for cash. Never had a car with no finance at all. So I bought it because that was my retirement gift from the Navy and Her Majesty. Thank you, ma'am. And I love that little car. And I've had it, what, 3 years now? Nearly 3 years, and it's just hit 10,000 miles. So it'll last me till I die. It's a lovely wee car. We bought this caravan when Mum passed away, and we got that bit of money. I invested the money in things that I would never have got otherwise. My wife's illness has progressed, so there was never going to be a chance for me to do it again. So I bought this static home, bought the car. Things changed in my life. I had extra money, and Sally, the good wife that she has, always said, take a few for yourself and just grow your collection, grow your little YouTube world. And she knows how much it means to me. It's as much to me as her knitting is to her, and her sewing and things like that. So I'm very, very blessed to have a wife who encouraged me that way. So I find myself, you know, just over a year ago with that extra sort of money that I could spend freely. I wasn't taking any food. I have never used my house money to buy knives. Never. You have to pay your bills, then then what's left over you can buy knives. So I can remember trading for, in fact, the first one, I bought this Hinderer, which was just under £300 when I bought it over here in the UK. The Hinderer Slippy Slicer, in memory of my father. My father wasn't a knife person. He'd had knives like most older men had, but there were never any classy knives or any good knives. So I bought this in memory of him, because I didn't have much memory things. My father wasn't a man for keeping things. He didn't even have hobbies or anything like that. So I bought this for him, and I can tell you from the day I bought this knife became special. This will never ever go anywhere. Never. When I picked this up, I think of my daddy, and I'm a 62-year-old man, I still call him daddy. This knife nearly made my YouTube channel more important, because to me, I was able to keep in contact. This is my contact with my father, and I feel it every time. But to have a Hinderer, I've now got Benchmade, ZTs, a Hinderer. Then with knives that I had gathered up, I traded for this knife, a Chris Reeve, which I never thought I would have a Chris Reeve. This is a small and cozy. Now, I went for this because I tried the big one and I didn't like it as a carry. It was too big in my pocket for what I use here in Northern Ireland. So I bought this because it was smaller. It still gets a 4-finger grip when I use the little toggle that came with it, and I love this knife. Just a great EDC knife. And it's a hinder, or not a hinder, it's a Chris Reeve with that beautiful action. I love it. I mean, I have it now where I can flick it open. I couldn't do that when I first got it, but it's still got that beautiful action on it. So again, I moved up in the category of knives. I had knives that I never thought I would get, but then money runs out. Money runs out, no matter, you know, I'd got a couple of thousand, so money ran out. And then, but because I'd been doing this for so long, I was able to sell and trade, and I got into GEC about a year ago. I'd always wanted, I got one before that about 2 years ago, and I thought, wow, I've got a GEC. That is out of the wind. And I got it for a great price from a chum in America. And I thought, brilliant, I've got one, I'm set. I've got 25 now, because that's what I spent the remainder of my money that I had. Buying, selling, going into the hobby. I got really just into GEC and slip joints, you know, high-end slip joints, and I absolutely love them. The fact that they're legal to carry over here is the big factor, because I can now carry a high-end knife here legally, and I'm not worried about getting stopped. The other knives I could get stopped and lose them straight away, but this I can carry, and it'll do anything I ever need to do. If you take the size of that to the ZT, there's not that much difference. Do you know what I mean? This can do everything this can do, and this can do everything I need to do. So I now had an outlet that really just kept me going, and I've really got into it in a big way. I say I managed to find a Facebook group where I was able to buy a lot of the GECs to get me started. I now buy, sell and trade, which is, for somebody like me who was a dummy as far as the internet, and I can buy, sell and trade now. I'd never done anything like that in my life, and I'm thoroughly enjoying that side of it. I don't have that excess money anymore. In fact, I think it was yesterday's video, I'm not buying any knives for 2 months because I went buck mad for about 6 months, buying, selling, trading, and my spare cash has gone. I'm not poor, but my spare cash is gone. And that's all you should ever put into a YouTube channel. That's my one bit of advice to anybody. Never go beyond your means just to get a knife. And I haven't. And it's the best thing I've ever done. Yes, I've maybe had to borrow £100 or something off Sal to pay it back because of a bargain that I couldn't let go. But I always knew I could pay it back at the end of the month out of the housekeeping and house money. What am I into now? I've even gone beyond GECs, and I'm buying customs. You know, wee Paddy buying Jim Skelton type knives. This is a John H. Lloyd I just got the other week. A beautiful, this is an old micarta. It's lovely. It's nearly faded, different fades through it. Beautiful. Love that shield. Is that not just beautiful? Really lovely work knife. Again, about the ZT size, but this is a custom knife. I mean, this sort of knife cost me 275 quid. I mean, now, I traded for it, but you have to trade knives that are going to be of that value, so I had to give 2 knives to get this one. But that's great because I have the ability to do that now because I've built up such a collection. And I haven't gone completely posh. This is one of my newest acquisitions. This is the Lion Steel collector knives, bolus, and it's the Oat Nat. And I thought that was I thought it was like a Swedish name or something. Never got it. When I done the video and put it up, somebody told me it's a reverse Tanto like my BM, which is why I really loved it. Oat Nat is Tanto spelt backwards, and I never even knew it. And I giggled when I found out. So thank you, whoever wrote that in the comments. Thank you so much. And that's the sort of thing that keeps me going. The comments, when subscribers give me so much information, and I find out things like that just make me laugh. Why didn't I know that? But that's the joy of YouTube. You get a wide variety of people who are in different stages of their collecting, or maybe they only have 6 or 7 knives and they don't need any more. brilliant, but they watch, they comment, they make the channel worthwhile. I love watching other people's channels, especially new channels, just to see how much it's changed. And do I think it's changed? Yeah, it has changed. Even since I started 5 years ago collecting knives properly, it has really changed. New channels start now with people coming in at this level, you know, at this level, which I still perceive as a huge amount of money for a stupid little pocket knife. And that's all it is. It's a pocket knife. Don't let anybody tell you it's anything different. It just, it just cut things. And this cut the same things about the same way. And I know we can try and make, because we spend so much money, we have to make something special out of the knife. But honestly, this and this cut about the same. This lasts a bit longer than this. I don't do a lot of long cutting, so why am I spending £8 for this, £300 for this? Madness. It's madness, and it is just to feed my little hobby, which is the enjoyment of knives. It's not any more complicated. I enjoy it, but I enjoy this. I enjoy this talking to you. I enjoy the crack that I get. I enjoy the insults that I get even. And that's changed. At first I used to get so upset if I thought I'd upset somebody. I'd be devastated. Not so much. Not anymore. So, I mean, these are the sort of knives, and I'm going for customs now. These are British makers. These are customs. This one's quite an expensive GEC standard. This one's under £100 custom-made knife for me. You can't beat it. And that's the sort of knives that I'm going for now. What else do I do that's kept my channel going? Look, I got this probably in the first 6 months. It was a gift from a subscriber. It was an old Leatherman. It's a Leatherman Pulse, one of the really old first Leathermans. I've never had to get another Leatherman because, well, I've got a small one, but I never had to get a full-size one because this has done me. I'm not a multi-tool person. This has been used more than any of my knives. I use this all the time for maintenance, for the jobs around the house. It is constantly in use, but I've never felt I needed another one. So I don't vary from my knives much buying other things. Watches. People get into watches and knives. Couldn't afford it. But I've never really been a watch person. I have a Casio I got off AliExpress for, I think it was £10 or £12. Had it for years now. Love it. I have a rotary watch of my father's for my fancy pants. And that's it. When I have the watch and I have that in my pocket, I'm going somewhere fancy or somebody's died. But that's the sort of watch that I wear on a daily basis. Because if I start to buy watches and I hear what people are paying, I'd end up in tears. I'm buying things like this now. Handmade pens. It's the first one I bought, mind you, but I really, really enjoy the pen. It is just a joy to fiddle with. I love fiddling with things. So I'm paying more for a pen than I've ever paid for a pen. Much more than my first knives. Things like this. A pry bar. Now, this one was given to me to review for him. That review still to come, bless his little cotton socks. I'm actually using it. Not a whole lot, but it's just something nice to have. It's something else that just, you know, I can't use all my knives. I couldn't use these every day of the week. But it's nice to have. And it's nice to put in your pictures. Instagram on top of YouTube. Instagram is just an amazing outlet to see what other people have got. And that's all we're doing, being nosy. That's what YouTube is being nosy what other people have. Or, in my case, it was, I loved seeing the more expensive knives. It seems to be a bit of a thing now. When you show an expensive knife, I get more people saying, oh yeah, that's all right, but I can't afford it. And I genuinely feel for it. But life can change, like mine. From an £8 knife that I absolutely adored, you know, up to a £275 custom knife. It has changed beyond my wildest dreams. So just never say never, because you really don't know what's going to happen and where you're going to go in any walk of life. It's like when you start a job, you never know where it's going to end up. It's like when you start a journey, you never know half the time where it's going to end up. There we go. I think I've covered everything. That is my journey through YouTube. It's about a half an hour long. I'm sorry for the length. sorry, not sorry, but I couldn't have done it any shorter. And to break it up into two parts, I'm not really a two-parter. But there you go, that's where I am. Some of the other things I still like fidget things. So there we go. Where am I going from here? Do you know, a lot of it will probably be mostly slip joints, but I do buy other knives, and I will buy other knives. I mightn't chase the higher end locking knives so much anymore, but there will be some when I see something that excites me, and I have to buy things that excite me now. Otherwise, to me, it's just throwing money at a wall and getting nothing back for it. So, and I'm also into the modern knives. I mean, I do like the modern slip joints. You know, that classification is getting more and more blurred between modern and traditional, because, you know, how much different this is what I would call a traditional, and this is a modern traditional. But when you put them beside each other, what real difference is it? And it's becoming blurred, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Jack Wolf's knives is some of the ones that are coming out with modern knives, modern traditional knives. Jack Wolf knives, Who knives over here in the UK, who are coming in with modern flipping knives, and so everything is sort of evolving and starting to blend in together, because the ceiling can only go so far, and then you have to merge together. Knife buying knives will change. They'll come up with something fantastic we all have to have. That's marketing. They're always going to be cleverer than us, because if they weren't, this would die out. So they have to be cleverer than us. And I like shiny things. Paddy's away. My cup of tea's blooming freezing. Take care, everybody. And thank you so much to my subs. For anybody who's ever put one thing in the comments, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'll keep trying to be better at answering. But don't hold your breath. Half the times I never get round to it. And sometimes I'm just a lazy big lump. But I really, really appreciate you watching. And we're coming up to 10,000 subs. Well, we're not coming up. We still have about 800 and odd to do. But there'll be a really lovely big giveaway. 3 really good prizes whenever that comes, for subs only. Take care. Puffer, cup of tea. I'm gone. Bye now.